Hello, everyone. Welcome to a BookBase interview with pilot and author Carole Hopson. Carole flies the Boeing 737 for United Airlines as a captain based in Newark, New Jersey. After successful careers as a journalist and as an executive, she decided to pursue her childhood passion of becoming a pilot. If you're interested in following Carole after this interview, feel free to check out her social media on Instagram at Carole Hopson underscore, Facebook at Carole C. Hopson, LinkedIn at Carole Hopson, and the website www.carolhopson.com. But Carole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And also, I'd like to introduce Elias. Elias is another co founder of BookBase, and he is here just to
Hello.
ask some questions. Awesome.
Excited to be here.
Dude, awesome. Alrighty, let's get it started. So,
Do
Carole,
it. Let's do it.
let's go. But for our first question, this is just starting us off. Carole, when did you first envision yourself as a pilot? I know you've talked about this being a childhood dream, but I love asking that first moment where you just either saw something or experienced anything that made you look up into the sky and just see yourself flying a plane. And on top of that, what was the turning point that made you realize that you wanted to become a pilot rather than carry on in the career that you had before at that point?
Wow, you guys start off with a bang with good questions. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me. Let me say that. I love the fact that you all are encouraging a whole new generation of readers. So that's a great place to start off with your first question. I think I've wanted to fly an airplane ever since I was old enough to look up into the sky and recognize one.
Mm.
So I'm going to say it was somewhere around age 4. And by the time I got to age 12 or 13, it was a way to talk about my curiosity in an intellectual fashion that got me out of doing chores. I would say, "Oh, I'm going out to the backyard to look at planes."
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But I must say, that's kind of what got my brain started around, "Oh my goodness, what is that up there?
Mm.
And how do I
Right.
get up there?" But it seemed as I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, as an impossibility, something that was just absolutely positively an outrageous, outlandish idea.
Right.
And it wasn't until, geez Louise, I met my boyfriend who would become my husband, who gave me gift certificates to go fly. And I said, wow, this is where it's at. This is what I've got to do.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's amazing. I think there's something really beautiful about the idea of flying. I actually visited the Smithsonian Museum for the Air and Space Museum in Washington D.C. And I'm that type of guy that I love reading every little insert. I can't skip a section without reading everything. And when I first entered that museum, I was honestly, just because I think I was raised in a world where flying was just already so common. I go to the museum and I just look at stuff and I go, what's the big deal? It's flying. And you look at the first airplane made by the Wright brothers and you look at the inserts for everything. And you start understanding that there was a time where people would look up in the sky and not see anything. And they never pictured humans flying in the air. They just saw animals, birds, or they would just see objects in the air, with balloons or whatever it may be. And I think it was so cool reading about the Wright brothers and how they one time they would look into the sky and they would look at a bird and they would look at each other and say, why not? And then they just started creating something and they started working at just building the first airplane. And it's so messy. And it's so incredible, though, on how messy it was because you can see how much of a difficult process it was. And it makes sense. You're defying pretty much like the laws of human nature because we're not made to fly. Birds have wings, fish have gills, we have feet, and we have arms. We're meant to be walking and meant to be crawling on the ground. But here we are seeing two, amazing inventors decide to defy this nature and decide to just go out there, not because they can, but because they just want to. And it's amazing seeing how many people are influenced by that journey of just wanting to conquer the air and the sky. And this leads to my next question, where I know your book, A Pair of Wings, is a historical fiction about the life of Bessie Coleman. And I wanted to ask you, why her? And rather than create a book about your own life to inspire other black women to become pilots or just other people to follow their dreams, instead of making it an autobiography about you, why did you decide to write one that pertains to Bessie's life?
Wow. Oh my goodness. So first of all, let me just say you had some great parents because both of you. I mean, I've spoken to both of you. Your intellect is extraordinary. And NASM, National Air and Space Museum. I'm actually going to be there in a couple of weeks just
Oh,
doing a book signing.
Oh, that's
so
I
awesome.
cool.
also I did a bunch during COVID for NASM, and it's so funny how we're talking about National Air and Space Museum, and the same breath we're talking about the Wright brothers,
Right.
because in
Right.
fact, and I love how you said it was very messy. Well, a lot of innovation is messy, right?
Yeah.
The first person who made pasta, it was probably messy and not great, but by the time we got to eating it all the time, it was delicious. Some of the
Right.
first pasta was, made in China, and it's a food to fuel people, right? So airplanes were made because we envisioned ourselves as not being earthly.
Right.
Now we use them today to transport ourselves at jet speed from one place to another.
Hmm.
But like most innovation, the beginning is very messy. And so on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers made the first flight. It was like I prepared for this interview, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you did your research and all.
You know your stuff. Yeah.
And here's the thing, that very first flight was 12 seconds. The Wright brothers were the first team to record a powered manned flight. And although it was just 12 seconds, there were brother teams, also bicycle mechanics all
Right.
around the world doing the same thing. They just did it first.
Hmm.
And what's so amazing about the brothers was that they, along with other people here in the US, started the innovation, and it was others who took it to the next level.
Right.
So the French, the Germans, the a Dutchman, right? And these individuals took that innovation and propelled it further. And there was a use for airplanes, and the use was in war. And so, as World War One became this global conflict, the airplane became useful
Right.
for two things: reconnaissance, where in the world, who was doing what, and in a way that you could spy on people without them knowing.
Hmm.
And thus began the beginning of camouflage. So they would have lozenges at the bottom of the airplane so you couldn't see it against the gray sky.
Right.
And also at the same time began the use of military weapons or weaponry from above.
Mm.
So along came this amazing trajectory. And it wasn't long. It was, I would say, after the war that we used airplanes to deliver mail.
Right.
We use airplanes to entertain and stunt piloting, right? And then finally to carry passengers. So airplanes grew up as civilization grew up. It's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Fascinating. So
And what we
fascinating.
see today, like we don't, it's almost like if you saw a garment and you'd say, oh my gosh, those are beautiful threads you have on.
Hmm.
But it's stuck in the words threads, right? Because
Right.
in
Right.
the beginning it was cotton and we made thread to make a garment. And so airplanes, like you're so used to being on them, and your parents, both of your parents were so sophisticated and showed you an elevated world through travel, which is one of the best educations that you can ever get.
Hmm.
And your parents, I could tell by the way you speak, both of you were so involved in giving their children and giving you both a vista into another world. And how do you get there? Well, you get there on airplanes.
Right.
How do you get there? You get there on trains, you get there on buses. But if you really want to go far fast, it's an airplane.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's something really special about specifically flight because when you're on a road, there's streets you have to follow. There's guidelines. You can't just go anywhere. You have to either go straight, make a left, make a right. You can go behind, you can reverse, but it's really limited in terms of the directions that you can go with. One thing that I really loved about reading about flight and why pilots love flying so much, it's that when they take off in the air, all of a sudden those guidelines disappear. There's no such thing as constrictions when you're
Kind of.
flying. Yeah, kind of course, of course. Yeah, yeah. Like if you're flying a
Yeah.
commercial airplane, yeah, you can't. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that's
No,
different. Of
like
course,
we
of
can't
course.
go
Don't
anywhere
get
Right,
me in
wherever
trouble,
we
guys.
want. Right,
right,
right.
Don't get
right.
me in trouble.
But could I ask real quick too, given that Nathan said that, you can go in multiple directions and stuff, this is a good little segue and transition into like your career, because you have a really interesting story about how you started in one place, and maybe you could talk about that, and then you stuck to your childhood dream, like you mentioned, and you ended up becoming a pilot. Could you talk about that career change and what gave you the confidence to really just do it, you know?
Wow, I love that. And thank you for that. So, you also asked me a question, Nathan, dubs right into your question, Elias. I mean, I I think about what would happen if I didn't do what I'm doing now. So I would live a whole life saying, people say, oh my gosh, weren't you afraid to do what you were doing? And I say, I was afraid to not to. Because if I didn't, I would spend the rest of my life with regrets. And I feel like regrets are wasteful.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. So I started off as a journalist. I was a newspaper reporter, a police reporter, and I left there. I went to the National Football League. I helped to found a program to get professional players back into college and jobs during the off season. And then I left there. I went to Foot Locker. I was an EEO officer within the company. And by the time I left 7 years later, I headed up all of training and development for Foot Locker Stores US. I had a lot to do with opening stores in Mexico and setting up protocols for Japan, and a lot to do with training of our executives in Europe. I started a corporate university. I started a merchandiser training program, a buyer's training program. A colleague of mine had created the store manager training program, and I executed it. A district manager training. At the core of all of those were math and science. I don't think anyone had ever said to me before, geez, Carole, okay, you're a good writer, but you're good at math. No one ever said that to me because as I was coming up, it wasn't important. We didn't call STEM STEM. It wasn't, what was STEM? STEM was you were an engineer or you were a mathematician, but girls,
Right.
so I just was doing it because naturally, when I looked at our business, I was like, oh, well, here's the best way to make this thrive or the best way. And in training, I have to make myself useful, or else guess what? I'm a cost center and they'll cut me. So I'm going to go ahead and make myself a profit center. How do you do that? Well, you do it with math.
Yeah.
And so that was really the impetus for doing what I was doing. But in so doing, I was always on a plane. I had an office in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and I was always going somewhere. We went to Amsterdam all the time. I was always on a plane. And every time I'd sit there in my window seat, window, I would be all misty. I would be like, oh my God, I should be sitting up front. I should be flying this airplane. How would I ever do that? And the my boyfriend gave me a gift certificate to go and fly, and I came back from that first flight, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to quit my job and go fly." And he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Back up.
we got to get
Yeah. You're ready.
he was like, let's create an exit strategy. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, it's two things. It's a financial plan and it's a plan to
Mhm.
get you where you want to go. So let's start by our education and figuring out what it is that you have to do in order to become a commercial pilot. What is that? What's the difference between commercial rather and professional? Commercial, professional. What is that?
Yeah.
Well, commercial is an FAA designation. Professional means I do it for a living. Oh, well, I couldn't have even said that sentence right after that first flight. How do you take that emotion and create strategy?
Mhm.
And then focus on that once you do it. And then let's take that dream and start putting some dates to it and some finance to it. And then you have a goal. And there's a difference between a dream and a goal, and it's a date.
Right.
Once you create a date for yourself, you create accountability. And once you create that accountability, then you start moving in that direction. And today we call that pivot. I don't think that was a word when I was doing this. It wasn't a pivot. I was creating a financial plan and a date. And there's a sentence I like to say. When I left 6 years later, I went from heading up a training and development with Foot Locker stores to head of HR for logistics and supply chain at L'Oreal Cosmetics. And when I left there, I remember saying to myself, wow, I went from making six figures a year to $16 an hour, and I had never been happier.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now listen, that's pretty rich for me to say. Had I never made six figures a year, I probably might not have been able to say that. But when I
Right.
started, I didn't make six figures a year. I didn't know anyone. I
Hmm.
came
Yeah.
to New York and I decided that I was going to be successful. And it wasn't necessarily a dollar or a figure, it was a state of mind. It was, I can work if I want to. If I don't want to, I don't have to. But I love work. And I always knew that I wanted to fly, but I never saw any women. I never saw any Black women. And I certainly never saw any Black women with eyeglasses. I wear contacts right now. And so when I went to a Women in Aviation convention, I met a woman who gave me a coffee cup and had Bessie Coleman's face on it and 50 words that changed my life. So why to get back to, and I love how you two dovetail off of each other. So I'm going to go back to one of the questions you asked me. Why not an autobiography? Geez, Louise, I haven't finished writing my story yet.
Right.
That's a good
I,
point.
I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I don't know. I better figure it out 'cause I'm growing up pretty fast. But Bessie Coleman's story, I believe, had slept for 100 years. Who was she? Why was she able to do what I wanted to do 100 years ago? Who was she? What sort of tenacity did it take to create a flight plan during an epoch and an era where women were just getting the right to vote in this country?
Yeah.
Where prohibition was a thing, where Black people were being lynched. How did she get the chutzpah, the gall, the guile? I mean, you just asked me another. Now, see, to go back to your question, Elias, where did I get the confidence to do what I did? Well, when I was looking at women who did what she did 100 years ago, hey, look, come on now. You can do this. She went to Europe to learn how to fly, and embedded in that sentence is she had to learn how to speak French
Yeah.
to learn how to fly. And she had to get on an ocean liner at the cheapest time of the year, which is what we now call hurricane season. So
Yeah.
while she's bobbing up and down and seasick, ocean liner down in steerage, I get on an airplane to go to my job.
Wow.
How can I not have the courage to face off what I face? And is it difficult? Sure. Are there people who don't believe that I should be where I am? Sure. So
Right.
what?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And even talking more about your book, A Pair of Wings, I while I was reading, I was just like, it's very inspiring, regardless of what passion, yeah, no, seriously, like it's really cool. I love the book. And I had a question too about you as a writer and even as a researcher. So very early on in the book, we're introduced to a bunch of characters. So, we got yeah, no, we got Mr. Duncan, the owner of the White Sox barbershop, Robert S. Abut, founder of the Defender newspaper, Jess Binga, the real estate, mogul. And I feel really, really immersed in this history. And I even am like, man, like I kind of, while you're writing and while I'm reading, rather, I'm looking up some of these people almost like, is this real? Like, I'm
Right.
trying to figure out, yeah, it's incredible and stuff. And I'm like, oh my, is this actually what happened? And I start researching on my own. So while I'm reading the book, I'm also like looking things up about, yeah, about the time period and stuff. So I really just wanted to ask, just how did you go about not only researching Bessie, but also just researching Chicago, the culture, these characters, these events? It just seems like such an enormous task because I didn't realize it was more than just Bessie that you really researched. Because these are all like figures and events and historical moments, and I just was like, "Oh my God, this is a lot." So
Sure
how
do
did you go
love you
about
too.
that?
All right, baby. Let me just pick that apart because you got to unpack that one. So
Yeah.
it took me 12 years to write the book.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
Oh my
gosh.
gosh. Isabel Wilkerson, she talks about it took 12 years for her to write The Warmth of Other Suns. And she makes this amazing, and I always give her credit when I say this,
Yeah.
because her book was pivotal to me in thinking about how do you deconstruct, right? How do
Mhm.
you how do you unpack someone's amazing life? And so she she writes, she says, if my book at 12 years in development had been born a child, I would have given birth to a middle schooler. And then I like to say, and mine would have had shoelaces in the backpack, because good gravy. 12 years is a long time.
Right.
When
That is a
I
long
started writing this book, my kids were 4 and 6. I mean, so imagine,
Yeah.
right? My 4-year-old was 16.
Wow.
My 6-year-old, I mean, was in high school.
Hmm.
So here's the thing. I wanted to give history without beating you over the head
Right.
with historical lessons. And the way to do that was to have people tell you about their lives. When I first started writing the book, I was an omniscient narrator who would tell you as a reader everything.
Hmm.
But yeah, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. I got tired of myself. And then I found this amalgam in Norma, gave her a name, but Norma is the one fictional character.
Okay.
Everybody else, for the most part, is real.
Yeah. Her
Some of
friend.
the names have been changed because they're real people and they had kids and stuff. But,
Right.
like, for example, Norma was an amalgam of Black women whom I met during my research. So things happened to Norma that didn't happen to Bessie, like that very, very, very difficult to write, very difficult to think, very difficult to read scene about Norma's assault.
Yes.
Because what happened to Black women, what happened to women, what happened to many women of color during that time when they didn't own their own bodies?
Right.
What happened to them? How do we tell that story? Well, we give you the example of Bessie's counterweight. So, where Bessie is adventurous, Norma is quiescent. Where Bessie escapes that horrible fate, Norma endures it. And you get the sense from Robert Abbott of the historical perspective because he is the chronicler of Bessie's career. And while Jesse Binga is Bessie's lover, he's also the first Black banker in Chicago. And he is able to give you a perspective of how difficult choices, banking seedy people in order to create picket fences around other people's dreams.
Right.
I did it again, dreams and themes, it's whatever word I just said, because because he is the one who takes these risks and makes these chances and walks around with a peacemaker, with a sidearm to keep people at bay so that he can continue to bank porters and maids and hardworking people who
Yeah.
literally were the backs of this country.
No, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
I promise that like you accomplished your goal of the history lesson without
Oh,
telling us like it's a history because I genuinely was looking up Robert Jesse the Defender. I was like, is the
oh,
Defender newspaper Chicago? Looking it up. I'm like, is this? Yeah,
and
it is.
crazy. And here's what's so crazy. At its heyday, at its at its point, at its most important, at its zenith,
Mhm.
the Chicago Defender was a newspaper that was read by 25, 30 people, as I like to say, before it became Birdcage Liner. And it would
Right.
be produced in Chicago. And then the Pullman porters, who were porters on
Yep.
trains, would take this newspaper down into the bowels of the South.
Yeah.
And people would pass it along almost like contraband. And it would be read again and again and again. And the way that people came, African Americans came from the South to the North, was by reading this newspaper and finding out where Jesse's flats were. And he
Right.
would go into a neighborhood, he would buy a property, he would fix it up, and then, sight unseen, when Black people moved in, other people with white flight, they would sell their homes, and Jesse, excuse me, would buy houses on either side. And then next, and then next, and then next. And so he was creating Bronzeville,
Yeah.
what people like to call insultingly the Black Belt. But what he
Right.
was creating was an opportunity for Black people to move. And so Jesse Binga and Robert Abbott were colleagues, and they had Oscar DePriest, who was a
Right.
politician. What?
Yeah.
And
That's
you
a
had,
super team.
I'm a super team. And it was something, and I don't think that we realized it. But at that time, desegregation was an early goal, right? That preceded the Civil Rights Act, that was born the same year that I was born. And so I don't think people saw on the other side of desegregation, which was our historically Black colleges and universities would then see the best and the brightest go to other schools because that's where money was. I don't think that we saw that those Black communities, which were so strong, with doctors, with lawyers, with architects, with builders, with engineers, with, I mean, you name the discipline, shopkeepers, restaurateurs, that they then had opportunities elsewhere, and so that they too would spread out.
Yeah.
African Americans left the South and the North, and I'm hold up my hand, and you can see the webbing of my bones. Looks like I need to have a little drink of water. But what would happen is the train would leave and it would go. So let's say the train left Georgia, and the train would emanate there and go all the way up. Let me go over here to the east. So
Yeah.
it would go to Philadelphia and points north of there, right?
Mm.
What were traditionally free states, so Newark, New Jersey, and then it would keep going to New York City, to Boston,
Yeah.
and in between Hartford and these cities. And then Blacks from Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, they would get on the train and a web would go up and they would go to Chicago and Gary and Detroit.
Yeah.
And for those who had enough stamina, they could make it all the way out west. And so Santa Fe and new places, west, Las Vegas, and finally to Los Angeles. And so that was how African Americans moved from the South to the North. And
Right.
Bessie Coleman becomes the only human being on the planet to be at the core of two seemingly disconnected phenomena. And that is the Great Migration of
Hmm.
African Americans from the South to the North and the dawn of aviation.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she went to Paris. And
And
she
she,
went to Paris.
and she
Yeah.
went to Paris. And she went
Yeah.
to
No, it's insane. Yeah, no, I was super immersed in Chicago that I ended up reading a lot about it. So thank you. And yep, yep. And I did want to talk one more thing about Paris too, even, and more specifically, Bessie Coleman, her first solo flight in Paris. I was reading that literally yesterday night, and I was kind of like, I felt like I was gonna fly, right? So in the scene where you describe she goes through her checklist and she ends up forgetting to sump the fuel due to her anxiety, right? She's super anxious. It's her first time. And then there's a line about her father's voice that she hears. And I'm gonna read this line really quick.
Please.
Yeah, so it says, "Don't stay inside your mistake, take from it. It is already in the past. Only carry its lessons into your future." So I this was really deep for me, and I was just curious if there's any moments that you can think of, just in general regarding your flight career or anything, while writing this, anything at all, where you kind of felt like you made a mistake, but you never really forgot about that lesson, and Bessie's father's words were like in you, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I think the greatest lessons are learned by our greatest failures. When you have a success, sometimes you say, oh, Hey, it's because I'm just bad, so and so.
Right.
Right? Or because you say, ah, beginner's luck. Or you say to yourself, ah, I was prepared. What happens when you fail, when you make a mistake, when something happens that's embarrassing?
Yeah.
Is you are forced. You're forced to, if you have pride in what you do, you're forced to go back and revisit it. Oh
Hmm.
shoot, what did I do on that check ride that I screwed up? Doggone it. I won't do that again. I'll make a new mistake, but I'm not going to make that one again. The lesson I take from it. Now, here's another thing. And I think, let me think about where that is. Oh, gosh, spoiler alert.
No, that's okay. A spoiler to everyone, you know.
Spoiler alert. Many times in flying, oof, you get the test before you get the lesson.
Right.
Let me say it for the choir in the back. Many get the test before you get the lesson. What do we mean by that? There are times when you have experience all around you and you pull it from wherever, and yet you are given a great test before you have ever done this particular thing. If you survive, you earn the lesson. And it becomes, as we like to talk about, you're given two bags when you start flying. One bag is
Yeah.
experience, one bag is luck. The
Yeah.
bag of luck is huge, the bag of experience is puny. And hopefully you take from the puny bag, right?
Yeah.
You take from this huge bag of luck, and from your experience, you start to add and to build that bag so it's no longer puny. And in life, sure, I made many mistakes. And it is from those mistakes that I learned. Let me give you one. I was so focused on going to be a pilot that I didn't. God, this is, God uses, and it's a piece in Paul where um, he's writing to the Corinthians and he says, God gives the simple to confound the wise. Now, I'm not saying I'm wise, but I will say I'm simple sometimes. Here was the simple. My husband and I had got married. We moved to New Jersey. We had our 5-year plan. It took 6 in order to have enough money to fly, 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 so I could manage all my certificates and my ratings in a time frame. Remember, I learned about
Yeah.
that date business
Yeah.
that would be acceptable to me to move on to the airlines. And so what happened is 5 years, 6 years had passed, and I had gone from 30 to 36 years old, and I was moving and grooving. I finished all my ratings in record time at 36 years old. I had gone from one flight hour to certified flight instructor, and I was moving and grooving. 3 months after I finished my CFI, my certified flight
Mm.
instructor, which gives you the license to build time to be prepared for regional pilot, then to go to the majors. That's the civilian track. So I gave it to you real fast.
Okay.
3 months after I finished, June 2001, July, August, September 11th. And my husband, because now my boyfriend was now my husband, he had earned the right to do that one. He was a keeper, as they say. He said, we should have some children because, no offense, not your job, not your career, but your industry is going to be circling the bowl for a decade. He said, now it's time to have kids. And I was like, ooh, me? Why don't you go do that with your second wife? No, 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 no. I don't want to mess this all up. My dream, the flying, my
Yeah.
body, what? Go do, let's just go hire some. What? What? And he said, okay, I'm just telling you, something you should think about. I was pregnant in 7 days.
Okay.
Never ever drink from someone else's cup of tea. So here's what I learned.
Yeah.
I had a miscarriage in 3 months and I was devastated. I didn't know the simple to confound the wise. What did I learn? What did I take to the next time? To get back to your question, what did I learn? I learned one of the most important lessons in my little life. And I learned that was what I wanted more than anything. I wanted that baby. I wanted that baby that I lost. And I said this, I know when we talked, I think I said this in California, I don't remember, but I had an opportunity to get pregnant again and I lost that one. And then I made one of those deals like you make with God. Hey, God, if you do this for me, this is what I'm going to do for you. It's so silly. It's just silly. But I said, here's the lesson I learned. I want that baby. And if you give me another shot at it, I promise I'll be more grateful. And it was the beginning of gratitude in my self absorbed little life. And so when I got pregnant that next time, ooh, be careful what you ask for. I gained 140 pounds. I weighed 301 and I ate my way all the way there. People say to me, did you have preeclampsia? Did you have diabetes? No, I had steaks, many of them. So I enjoyed my day. Thank you very much. I had steaks. I had that pasta I researched. Anyway, what happened was, and frankly, I didn't eat a lot of sugar until the end. Sugar is sugar. I was anemic, and so the meat. I would eat 5 and 6 steaks a day because I was anemic. What did I learn? I learned that I needed to prepare my body to make this little baby happen. I learned that I needed to get into my spiritual closet to really be clear about what it was that I was doing. I learned that on my deathbed, when I'm so old, I pray that I'm cold and shivering because I've lost so much weight. Learned that I won't say, hey, I want another leg to Fort Lauderdale. What I'll say is, dear Father, dear Joshua and Coleman, did they, oh, look at the sun as I say this. Did they get what they needed in order to be successful in this world and successful in their own eyes? Not in mine and not in the world's.
Mhm.
But did they garner enough from me? And may I have one more day with them? Oh, that's my dog.
Your dog too.
Your dog was like, "Amen." Your dog's locking in.
Amen.
And by the way, I have never lived a day without a dog, and neither have my children.
Wow.
That's
That's their dog jam. And dogs are amazing. They help
Yeah.
you. They just help you get over stuff. They
Yeah.
help you if you've had a bad. Both of my boys are athletes, and if they've had a bad game, Champ doesn't know it. He thinks that the
Yeah.
layup was amazing.
Right.
He
Right.
thinks that
Comes
was
Absolutely.
down.
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
In fact, let's go outside
Wow.
with the ball. Can we go
Right.
outside with the ball? See?
Wow.
Right. No,
No.
absolutely. I think first of all, I just want to say I was getting a little bit emotional while you were talking. That was a really great way to put it. And you're a really great speaker. First off, on dogs, I think there's something really beautiful about having an animal in your household that just gives so much loyalty without asking
Ooh,
for much.
no.
And there's some people that love cats because it gives them the independence. Like, you don't really need to be that clingy with a cat. But there are some dogs that will literally wait by the door knowing that you're on the other side, and they'll do it for hours. And it's
That's
it's
true.
beautiful to raise a family and to even live your whole life or most of your life with a character that can give you so much love without asking for much, because I think it teaches you that you don't need much to give love. And
Woo.
that's where dogs really symbolize, for me at least. And I think that's beautiful that you have a family that is centered with a dog and stuff. And
Yeah, and you know something? And let me just say one more thing on
Yeah,
yeah,
dogs.
absolutely.
absolutely.
I've just never had cats because my sister was allergic, so we just
Mm-hmm.
didn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I've always had a dog from the pound.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, he's part dog, excuse me, part hound and part shepherd,
Mm-hmm.
but he sounds a little like a big right. Um, I've never had a dog that I haven't just loved. I've never, ever, ever my own parents. I never lived life. I've never known life without a dog,
Yeah.
and neither have my boys. Now, having said that, this might be the last one because, oh my God, as
Yeah.
I move around the planet, oh my goodness, I don't know. I say that, but I don't know.
Who
I could be
knows?
Who
Who
knows? Who knows? Maybe
knows?
you never know. It's always the moments where you say you don't want it, that something just happens in your life, and you
Yeah.
go, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? Maybe this will be the last one. Then it happens again. So I wouldn't think so far about that. I think you just got to enjoy the moments that you have right now. And I just wanted to quickly go back to what you said about learning the lesson. And I think that there's an incredible amount of self love and patience that comes with the ability to learn. And I think that is something that's so beautiful about Bessie's story because she lived in a world where everyone told her, you don't need to love yourself because you don't matter. And in a time where you are told by multiple people, pretty much by a whole society, that you don't matter. Exactly, yeah. That you're just because of the way you look, the way you act, and where you come from, you don't mean anything from the second that you're born. That is a devastating thing to learn, especially back then. Imagine growing up as a child. My parents raised me with the idea that I can do anything, and living in a world where you have people telling you the opposite. There, it's no surprise that there are so many people that would be living in this time that'd be so heartbroken before they even got the chance to start to even be heartbroken on something. They're already broken down by the time they even started. And the beautiful thing about Bessie, like the flame behind you, it just kept on showing. And it's phenomenal how somebody can pretty much be treated so horribly by random strangers or even people in her own life and be treated and being told so many negative things, and at the end of that she gets on that plane and she goes. There is so much strength in that, and for you to even speak about your own story, trying to be a mother and learning about the lessons you did in life, I think there is a there has to be a point where you have to talk about, well, how do you get the ability to learn about such amazing lessons? Because I think everybody has the opportunity to learn amazing lessons out there. That's the beauty of life. The issue that I see sometimes is that people don't really give themselves the chance to learn. And there's many reasons for that. For example, I think sometimes when I think I'm really good at something, I get stubborn. I don't want anybody to mess with my work. And it's true. And at the same time, it's helped me with so many things. It's helped me contribute to BookBase the way that I have because I'm a perfectionist. I want to nail that thing down. And if I'm not happy with it, I tell Elias all the time, I'm upset. I need to make this right. And this perfectionism sometimes comes at a cost, where sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant to take in feedback. And that lack of me wanting to take in that feedback sometimes allows me to make more mistakes than I sometimes admit that I don't want to, but I do. And I think, especially being a pilot, but working in any industry, and especially just being a human, the ability to just say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm not perfect. Let me learn from this. Let me understand what's going to happen the next time. The way that Ellis was speaking about that chapter about Bessie Coleman's father, giving her those words. Those words are so strong, and not just because, like, yeah, theoretically, you are going to make mistakes. But when you do notice it, and you step back and you go, wait a minute, let me take a minute to understand why this happened. Let me learn from this. Incredible patience and an incredible amount of self-love. And I think that's the best thing about looking up to role models like Bessie Coleman. You meet people that give themselves that opportunity to learn. And I think that's not spoken enough. And just in general about role models, what really makes somebody an inspirational person, it's that they knew that they were flawed to some aspect, but they didn't let that stop them. And it's not about living life knowing that you can't do everything. It's about living life knowing that if you really work your best at something, you can do one thing amazing. And that's what really matters. And this leads to my next question because I think sorry.
One
Yeah.
big
He
question
should
right
write a
there.
book.
No, no, no. I mean, one. I don't know. I just feel
Yeah.
like this is
That
just
was
such a
great.
beautiful build up because I know you're gonna love where this is gonna go. An
Okay, go.
estimated 200 black women are professional pilots, making up 0.1% of the total amount of professional pilots in the United States. You mentioned when we first met the Jet Black Foundation and that you have a mission to give a pair of wings to 100 black women pilots. And the reason I bring up all this about learning lessons, about living life and giving yourself that patience and self love to fight for that battle, how has that been going for not only yourself currently as you're being a pilot and you're seeing all these people that you're commercially flying across the country or wherever you may be flying, but how has the journey been going for giving those pair of wings to other black women? And it doesn't have to be a pair of wings, but the motivational speaking, the ability to network with other black women and being able to be that figure that I'm sure Bessie Coleman has the privilege of being able to be like, hey, I was doing that too 100 years ago. You're essentially doing that for our generation. And how has that been for you?
Oh my Gracious. All right, so let me start where you ended.
Yeah.
So we are, the number is very, very tiny, right?
Right.
It's less than 1%. Number of black female captains. I mean, you met me. I'm one of, I don't know, maybe 2 dozen in the whole country
Right.
out of 150,000 people who fly for a living, which is just crazy when you think this way. We have a pilot shortage and we need to find a different talent pool.
Hmm.
We need to tap a talent pool that probably has never even been looked at. And here's the reason: the military, I talked to you about a civilian journey, and you could see where it's fraught with um, pit holes. Bret Hart, the United Airlines president, he calls them trap doors, where okay, you don't have enough money, so you don't make it through. Or you get a bad check ride and you can't explain it, so you don't get through, or you get sick, or whatever. These are trap doors. And as these things happen, that kind of knocks people out. And as that begins to whittle down a talent pool, the military is not training pilots in the same robust way that it used to. And so we don't have that talent, but we don't have that pipeline. And so we have to look somewhere else. So let me just start there. That's a landscape
Hmm.
in which the Jet Black Foundation was created. And my goal is to send 100 Black women to flight school dates between the year 2025 and 2035. So we've done this build up to now. And my goal is to find them when they're in high school and put them through one of 5 or 6 schools. I'm looking for, even as we speak, a development director who will help us raise $30 million, $3 million a year for the next decade to get Black women into flight school. And I've been asked, well, why Black women? Not why not this? Why not that? Well, because of the numbers that you just said.
Yeah.
And what we learned, talk about lessons, what you focus on, you will succeed. Bessie Coleman's one true thing was learning how to fly. Hey, here's my husband. Hey, honey, would you do me a favor and plug in the computer for me? You see, Michael, I'm speaking with two wonderful gentlemen at BookBase. It's a
Oh,
brand new app.
Hi, Mr.
Get the
Hobson.
Michael, that's his dad.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
good.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Voice from the other side. And so their
The
motto,
wizard.
yes, yes, that would be you, my love.
Thank
They're,
you.
I'm bigger than the wizard.
well, there's that. Michael is 6'4". Our boys are 6'5" and 6'9". And much to his
6'8".
chagrin, oh, I'm sorry, 6'8". And much to Michael's chagrin, they're both taller than he.
Oh man,
Um,
that's yeah, man. I don't know what that's like. Just one day waking up and you're like, oh, hello. Like, would you like breakfast?
he
That's
probably
crazy.
remembers though. He
Yeah, he
remembers.
remembers. Yeah.
he remembers.
Does woefully, woefully so. Okay.
Oh
Anyway, he
man.
plugged me back in, so that's good, as he usually does. Okay. Anyway, so because of that, we have to create a pipeline in a talent pool that we've never looked at.
Hmm.
And that's why the Jet Black Foundation is so important. We need founders, we need funders, we need people who are interested and interesting, because they are going to do, I'm going to go back to what you just talked about, Nathan. And so you asked me something that was so important. How does Bessie Coleman find and do what she did in an era where everything about her said that she couldn't and that she shouldn't? I believe that there are certain people who are internally motivated. It's just that that flame, it burns right here, and it burns inside so bright and so forceful that nothing can put it out. Not water, not a thermal containment bag, nothing.
Right.
Nothing, because it is internal. It does not depend on external factors to make it go, to give it fuel. that, your parents, your DNA, 70% of whom we become is from our environment. And that environment does one or two things to us. Now another 30% arguably is from our parentage, right? And so there's more than half that gets influenced as you come along the way. And I believe that Bessie Coleman, who picked cotton as a child, who had a laundry route, who filed men's nails, who worked doing the same kind of work that slaves had done. Her mother had been a slave. And when she was born in 1892, it was arguably less than 30 years since the end of slavery in Texas. You guys aren't even 30.
Right.
In a lifetime, she had learned that in order to do this one true thing, talk about lessons learned, I must focus with, and today we would use the term laser precision, and I must not let that dream leave me, no matter what. And that's what I learned from studying her.
Right. And I hope that you can pass on that lesson, or not even a lesson. I just feel like sometimes it's just instilled deep in you. It's just you need somebody to really pull it out and say, hey, it's there. And I really do hope that with the Jet Black Foundation, you're able to find so many people that didn't even realize that they wanted to do something like this to, to boost up those numbers, to fly. And I think it's great that there is somebody like you out there to say, hey, it's not a matter of, if it's possible. It's when you want to go for it. And when you are ready
That's
to go for it, I'm right here. You can come to me and we have the opportunities to help you get to where you want to go. And I think
I
that's
think
amazing.
the sun is shining again. Jetplatfoundation.org. And we need people to contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, put up or shut up, right? So a lot of times people say, oh my God, that's an amazing thing, and blah, blah, blah. And they don't give what you guys are giving. Right now, reading brings people together.
Right.
And so that's what you all are doing, right? And I believe that we don't get anywhere without the slightest discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
If we're always comfortable, we probably won't strive to do something differently. Why should we?
Right. Right.
Why should we?
Yeah.
Because we're comfortable. And my husband used to say, when we were both in corporate America, I still am, I'd like to have a little bit of cracker crumbs in my bed. I remember asking him, what do you mean by that? He said, well, it makes you uncomfortable so that you're always trying to do better,
Mm-hmm.
even
Right.
in your craft, even within an organization. And certainly that's true for pilots. We need to continue to study. We need to continue. Let me just reach over here. I'll show you my little notebook. So, in addition with my to do list, which is, oh my God, long and plentiful, I have a list of things that I study. You know, FM is
Wow.
our flight manual. So I'm always studying, I'm always learning, I'm always trying to get better at
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
craft.
Yeah.
That's one of
No,
the lessons I've learned.
Amazing.
that's amazing. And I think something that we're trying to do at BookBase as well is really bring authors and readers kind of bridge that gap where you can learn so much just from, a book, like an author expressing themselves in a book. Like I just mentioned earlier, how I actually ended up reading more about Chicago, and that wasn't like it was in A Pair of Wings 100%, but you wouldn't I wasn't even expecting to do that. I was not expecting that. And so we really see that value of bringing author's message, which sometimes you read it and you don't even expect to, understand it fully, and having the author kind of talk about what their message is and bringing people together through reading, if that makes, any sense. And
Sure.
so my question is, what are your thoughts about the importance of the social aspect of reading and
Mm.
bringing, an author's message via a book and having the reader read that, and kind of that book is the gap, or the bridge rather, that bridges the gap, and we're really just trying to bring the social aspect of reading to talk more about that bridge. And that's why I'm really happy to be speaking to you, because as I was reading A Pair of Wings, there were so many things that I was like, man, I really want to talk to Carole about this, and I was able to. And that's what we're trying to do at BookBase, is just kind of make it more of the social aspect of reading. So
I
what are your
love
thoughts on the social aspect of reading? And reading brings people together.
I love that. And I love your motto. I love the fact that you guys are encouraging young people to read. So often in our urban schools, you're a book a worm, you're a nerd, you're a this.
Right.
If you don't read, well, my goodness, how are we ever going to connect again, right? To our past, to our future. What we don't learn about learning again, we repeat. So a very good girlfriend of mine, very well-to-do woman, I had a conversation with her. And I said, well, and she was from Chicago. And I said, well, it's like the stroll. And she said, the what? I said, the stroll. And she said, the what? I said, the stroll. And she had never heard of it. And so it's almost like in a building where you're going to renovate the building. And as you take down the wall, you see, oh my goodness, well, there used to be a brick wall here.
Right.
Well, wow. Okay. Well, this is how they started the building, and now I want to renovate this. But geez, why did they put that wall there? Oh my goodness, it was as support. Well, the stroll existed because Black people couldn't make a financial focus anywhere else but a concentration in a city. And so along State Street, from this numbered street to that numbered street, it's where there was a concentration of
Yeah.
finance, intellect, and commerce, and not just finance but commerce, right? So banking, but also like people who built houses and businesses. And so there was this concentration: education, intellect, finance, commerce. And it was so concentrated that's hard to believe that it went away. But you need to know about that. I think you guys will make reading cool again. I love to see somebody on an airplane that puts everything down and they're reading a book.
Yeah.
Because why? Below 10,000 feet, we have to make you put your laptops away and this and that. Well, you're going to what? Sit there and twiddle your thumbs? Let's get a book out. And reading is transportation that transports us faster than jet speed, right? And so, how can you not read? How can you not find reading sexy? Uh, you know, you talked to me about the character Willie, right? Willie is so awful. You
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what your impressions were of Willie, who she
I
is, and why you thought she was so awful.
Yeah, I just couldn't stand it because Bessie comes in and she's so happy, she's elated to have traveled, see her brothers. She hasn't seen her brothers in a while. And then, one of the first experiences she has is with Willie, which is one of her brother's wife. And she's so rude and she speaks her mind, which is like, that's two sides of a coin where that's good, but at the same time she really really speaks her mind and just says, just in her face, she doesn't like you. And I was just reading that, I was like, what? I was like, I gotta talk to Carole Hopson about
What?
it. I'm like, I can't stand Willie right now. Like, can you please let Bessie just came in? Like, can we relax, please? Yeah, if you could talk about Willie too, I'd love to hear about Willie. Because I was like, why Willie? Yeah, how did
Why,
you
Willie?
that?
Why?
I was looking into that too. I was like, what? And then, later in the book, she has her own, hardships and trouble, which you understand. Like, there's a human perspective to it. But just initially coming into Chicago, being super excited, and Willie comes in and she's very
Gilroy.
unwelcoming. I'm intimidated. I'm like, oh my god. And I'm also thinking because John makes all these jokes, like, her other brother, and I'm just kind of like, man, like, yeah, get your act together. What's going on in this? I was just tripping out over that so
This is
much.
so funny.
Yeah, I don't know if
Willie
people
is
have talked to you about Willie, but
Oh man, some people, some people love to talk about, well, why did okay, so let me jump for a second.
yeah,
I want
yeah, yeah.
people yeah. People ask me, why does Bessie have sex in this book?
Right.
And then, it was a reporter who asked me that question, and I deadpanned and I said, well, do you like sex? And she was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, did your parents maybe
Right.
have something other than a cup of tea to make you happen? It's what you're trying to show, and let's go back to Willie,
Right.
is that people are not all bad, they're not all good.
Mm.
And so someone can be very, very sophisticated financially and very unsophisticated personally. It
Right.
doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's correlations, right? Because someone who's really good with people might be really good journalists, right? Because they understand people. But maybe someone who's a great mathematician, maybe, just maybe, they're also really good at gardening because people have multiple facets.
Right.
And so, how you respond to a Willie tells us a lot about Bessie. She's kind of like,
True.
well, let me go
Yeah.
ahead and get my act together so I don't have to put up with this anymore. Because she's
Yeah.
crazy. She might do something to me while I'm sleeping.
She threw the plate. I actually was like, oh my God, why did she throw the plate? Yeah,
Damn.
no, this is actually really cool. I just want to say this is really cool. I'm speaking to an author about a character who I was reading about, and like I can really express myself. Like, what the? And you're the one that wrote. I don't know. I think this is really surreal for me because I was
And by
thinking
the
about
way,
this. I was like,
I loved Willie.
you loved
I
Willie?
Oh, really?
No.
She was dastardly.
She was
It was
fun.
fun. Don't you sometimes want to take a plate and just throw it at somebody?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
but I don't actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She did it. She did it. Yeah.
She did.
She
And it
did
was
it.
fun. Ooh,
Yeah.
shoot.
That is fun.
It was fun. Willie was
Yeah.
fun to write about. How her voice squeaked every fifth word,
Yeah.
right? Because she's so doggone angry, she can't even vocalize. She's so pissed off. The other word was squeak. The dog got up when I did that. It's okay, Champ. I'll put Willie back. Put Willie away.
Champ is like, is you guys talking about Willie? I love Willie.
Yeah, that's funny. No, that's
Awesome.
It's funny to listen to people's reactions, and that was great fun for me. I want you to know to hear that because
Okay, that's cool. Because I was also like, I had no idea we were gonna end up talking about Willie. I don't know how many people ask about Willie, but it was in my mind. I was like, Willie, what is wrong with you?
Willie, why? And then
Yeah.
of course I had fun with her name, Wilhelmina. Wilhelm.
Yeah, and then yeah, I remember like they made a joke about her name too, like hell. I remember Willie. Yeah, but
I'm gonna have to make sure Willie makes it to the movie. She didn't get cut.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
she has to. Let it be said right now.
Yeah, make sure it's a real authentic plate when she throws it in the scene. Make sure it makes that loud sound when it bam. Oh my gosh, but yeah, Carole, we're approaching the end of the interview, and I just wanted to say thank you for not only informing us about Bessie's life and telling us about the modern scene with what it looks like with pilots, but just also expressing the hope that Black female pilots have today and how it correlates with Bessie's hope when she was also trying to be a pilot. Thank you for talking about your journey, your lessons, and just educating us on just the other facets of life that allow us to just be better versions of ourselves. So thank you. You were amazing to speak to.
Thank you
Too.
so
It
much.
was so fun. And what a highlight of my day. And I'm so grateful. If you all would send me this link, I'm going to post this.
Absolutely.
And you guys are fun. Thank you. You
Thank
make
you.
reading fun. Wasn't that a something? Make reading fun. It sounds like
Right, no, that sounds like a pipe dream. If I was in high school and you told me make reading fun, I'd be like, get out of here. But yeah, no, now we can. Now there's so many opportunities to do so. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Carole.
thank
Thank you.
you.
It's a real honor. Seriously,
What a
like
pleasure.